So with the defined future state, what does that really mean? So inputs here are the business requirements, the needs, all of those, again, like everything else. And then once you have this requirements and the needs and the clarity in terms of what are the opportunities that we have, what are the needs that the customers have and the users, then you can actually try and define the future state. So that's where you need to define the business objectives, as what we call. The business objectives here are basically the ones that are important for you, that would be the output or the outcome from this particular activity here. The future state description and the potential value, all of these need to be coming out from this particular activity. So you not only need to come up with the objectives for the business, what the business needs to do in the next 1 year, 2 years, but you also need to have a description in terms of where do you want to go. And that's where you need to really come up with potential value as well. So it's very important that you take care of these, the business objective, the future state description, and the potential value. And then from there, it's important that you would move on from there. What do I mean by business objectives? We're going to, when you say refer notes, it's actually coming in the next slide. So business objectives, very important. Future state description, you need to have a clear description, definition of the to be. And then what is the potential value that we're trying to derive by going to that vis-a-vis some other place, yeah? So that's the potential value. So what are each of these? We'll try and look at it from this in the next slide. So here we're talking about the constraints. We want to define the future state. We're going to have the constraints. We're going to define, understand the constraints, the challenges, the problems, or the kind of resource restraints that we have that are actually kind of pushing us and into the corner, or pushing us to actually to the limits of taking a particular decision. So we need to understand what are the current set of constraints that we are operating in. And the current state description, again, very important, because that is actually, as we discussed, that's going to help us to stand on the pedestal so that we can actually view from here to the future, to where we want to go. The metrics and KPIs would actually help you to understand where you want to go, in what way, by what vehicle, and with what speed. All of these, the planning could actually work it out better with the metrics, KPIs, the measures into the KPIs is key performance indicators. So all of these, customer satisfaction, reduction of errors or defects, all of these would be the KPIs. And the organization strategy as to that would actually obviously define and support how you would achieve the set future state and the metrics and KPIs with that supporting aspect of either the processes, the procedures, the governance, resources, everything that we do, whatever tasks and the processes that we follow. So in terms of defining the future state, what exactly is that? So this means that it actually it is about defining the necessary conditions that are required to meet the business need. So we have already got the business need, the opportunities, the requirements from the previous activities. So once we have those, what is it that we need to help address those, to meet those needs, to be able to satisfy those business requirements? What are the things that we should have, that we should satisfy, that we should have within our own organization? And that's what we do here. How do you do that? You would need to understand that from different perspectives. Again, you can achieve this with a lot of different tools and techniques. You can actually try and come up with the most analysis, the mission, objectives, strategy, and techniques. You also have to have a clear definition of the mission statement, the vision of the stakeholders, their objectives, their goals, their roles, and the expectations from the project or the process or the initiative. All of these need to be in place. And once you have that, then what you need to do is to come up with a clear definition of the outcomes. It's not just the outputs, but the outcomes from the initiatives. It could be a project, it could be a process, it could be a change initiative, a program that you did at the business level. It could be a technology buy or build decision. Whatever it is, the outcome would actually need to be mapped to the business need. If it is not, then that means there is a gap. That means you're doing something wrong. And then the scope of the solution space should be in detail. It should be fairly detailed. And that's where you're talking about the solution scope in the previous set of activities we discussed already. So the solution space and the solution scope needs to be fairly detailed so that you can understand what needs to be done to get to that point. What are the constraints that we have got right now, which need to be overcome to get to that point? And then enable the assessment of the value. So we need to understand, when you say the future state or the to be solution, to be situation, how are we going to see that as a benefit to us? How is it going to help us? Having a new product, how does that help the customers? Having a new process or a change in the existing process, a better way to do things from what we're doing now, how is it going to help us as the teams and the employees to do things better in a more productive way, so that we can reduce costs, we can increase savings, we can get more and more sales. So all of these these are all definitely different ways of delivering that value to the organization, and very important again to understand. So, and there needs to be done a lot of different changes to get to that, right? So that's what you can do, the changes or propose the way of improvement in different aspects. One could be the business processes, as we just discussed. It could be change in the business process and your activities, business activities, in the structure. It could be change in the functions, in the departments, in the teams, marketing, sales, operations, infrastructure, all of these, technology, customer service, all of these are functions. It could be a change in the way that you're doing those. It could be change in the line of business. It could be totally new business unit, new product line, new business area that you want to enter into. For example, Tesla is a company which has been into the electric vehicle manufacturing, and they've been doing it. And suddenly they thought that they won't actually, not suddenly, but perhaps it's been well thought out. But this, Elon Musk came out with saying that I want to launch people into the space. That's my vision. And so they started with the space launching reusable rocket into the space, the SpaceX. And then they say that, no, we're not just here. I would come up with a traveling way, a way of travel, or to create a mode of travel which is 100 times faster than the airplane. And they come up with the concept of the loop, the hyperloop. And then they are now and then they created a company called the Boring Company, which actually digs and bores through the mud and creates the tunnels to enable this hyperloop transport. That's a new line of business totally, which has nothing to do with electric vehicles, but that's a different line of business for that organization, Tesla. So it's working. So you've got different lines of business. They may not be synergy. There may not be enough synergies amongst your line of business, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how you're going to execute your strategy, how you're going to make sure your vision is actually delivered across these different lines of business in the way independently. That's not a problem. And that's why they call it as a diversified group, right? You diversify into different things. Some companies are into oil and gas. They're at the same time they're into technology. They're into banking. They're into industry. They're into different kinds of things. That's why it's called diversification. They're not focused on one aspect, one business, but they're fairly diverse at the same time. Staff competencies, the skills of the teams, that again comes into picture. Technology know-how, how much of the technical know-how that you have got to actually get that better negotiation power, how much of reputation you have, the business knowledge that you have got in the market, and that would actually up your ante in terms of negotiating with your suppliers and also get better pricing as well. Data and information, very important, because that's what they say. Data is the new gold. So it's the new coal, as they say, or the data is the new coal of this century. Just like how coal was considered as the black gold sometime a few decades ago, and now people are trusting on the data. They're actually trying to save data. They're trying to retrieve data. They're trying to analyze the data. They're trying to do a whole lot of stuff with the data that you have got about the business, about their customers, the users, how people use the behaviors. Very, very important to leverage that aspect as well. And then organization locations, geographical locations of organizations, again, you can question, having 110 offices across 50 countries. Do you think that's a good strategy? Well, that works out, but sometimes it might be overheads because you're not really using all those, the real estate of that. You're just paying for the fees, for the rents, and perhaps the building costs. But then is it really worth when you've got these kind of things where people are working remotely, working teleworking? In such a situation, you need to consider what is it that you need to do, that, and the facilities and all that, again, the same. So you need to, as a BA, you need to really be conscious of these different